Our next debate on the agenda is case of Victoire Ingabire in Rwanda. We begin with the authors, and the first one is Mr. Lopakka.
Thank you very much. The case of Victoire Ingabire is a prime example of the ongoing challenges to freedom of expression and political participation in Rwanda. As a member of the delegation of Africa-EU Parliamentary Assemblies, I am aware of how important it is to strengthen democratic principles and human rights in Africa. The EU has a responsibility to share its values and standards by supporting not only development, but also human rights and democratic principles and civil society across Africa. We do it next week, observing the elections in Malawi. And we cannot accept that political opposition in Rwanda is systematically persecuted. The repeated imprisonment of Madam Ingabire, despite clear rulings by the African Court, is an alarming signal. The government of Rwanda must end political persecution and guarantee the safety of all political actors. Victoire Ingabire deserves and needs our support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Madame May.
Ja, dank u wel, voorzitter. Meneer de commissaris.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner. Now, there are sports events, economic events in security, but that's very different to the political situation. Victoire Ingabire was an opposer to the regime, arrested for political opinions. This is the second time. The first time she was arrested, she spent 8 years behind bars. And she hasn't been able to have contact with her children. This is oppressive against political opponents, and we call upon member states to make sure that Victoire and the 9 other leaders of her party are liberated, and that she can have a fair trial, and that she can take part in elections, and that journalists and civil society can benefit from freedom of expression.
Goedenavond, meneer de voorzitter, commissaris, collega's.
President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, today we have 2 special guests in the public gallery, and I would like a round of applause. Remy and Haisa, the children of Victoire Ingabire, they're here, sitting up there to my right, and they are fighting her battle, a battle for freedom, justice, and a democratic Rwanda. Even if Victoire is unlawfully detained, she is here with us. We are talking about 2 young people, about her children, who are brave, and their presence shows us that there is a family behind each political detainee, and behind each political decision there can be changes to people's lives, and they are the living proof that hope cannot be contained behind bars. And we are here this evening to ask for the immediate and unconditional release of Victoire Ingabire and all her colleagues who are activists and journalists who are languishing in jail. They are behind bars. I would like to say to you that you can count on us. We will continue fighting for the release of your mother.
Madame Vieira.
Dear Chair, dear colleagues, and now as well, dear children of Victoire. Today, this Parliament calls for the immediate and unconditional release of Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza and other opposition figures who are on trial for politically motivated grounds. She is a courageous opposition leader, jailed not for any crime but for daring to challenge the status quo. And sadly, her case is not unique. It is part of a broader pattern. In Rwanda, opposition voices, independent media, and civil society are being silenced, systematically, deliberately, and with impunity. Those who speak out face intimidation, surveillance, detention, or worse. The European Union cannot be a silent partner to repression. Our credibility depends on speaking up, not just when it's easy, but also when it's necessary. I call on the EU and the Member States to confront the Rwandan government on its crackdown against political opposition and violation of human rights. Our cooperation with Rwanda must be consistent with the promotion of human rights and democracy, including fair trial standards. If we stay silent, we legitimize oppression. If we speak with courage, we give hope to those who risk everything for democracy. Let us please choose courage.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Monsieur Mariani.
Day after day, the facade presented by the Rwanda regime is cracking. Mr. Kagame is a dictator, and he ordered massacres, civil persecution, looting in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the president of Rwanda nevertheless has been the protégé, the favourite of Brussels for a long, long time. Nobody had anything to say about the fact that he was elected a fourth time round with a sort of Soviet score of 99%. Nobody said anything. Now, with this new commission, maybe things are changing. But quite honestly, the way in which we've just turned a blind eye to what's going on in Kigali is unacceptable. It goes against the moral principles of the EU, the ones we hold up to the rest of the world. The case of the opposition politician, Ingabire, is, I think, symbolic. She is the democratic hope of her country, the kind of hope that Kagame is trying to put out since he ordered arbitrary detention and incarceration for Mrs. Ingabire. It is absolutely essential that Mrs. Ingabire be released, and we should no longer cooperate financially or in trade terms with Rwanda. We must stop it immediately, because Europe can't be complicit here with Kigali.
Monsieur, our next speaker is Mr. Freilich.
President, the case of Victoire Ingabire is concerning. In her opposition to Kagame, the arrest was certainly politically motivated. We need to act within our possibilities, exert pressure on the Rwandan authorities, show that they can't have kangaroo court cases. And Professor of law in London believe that we need to make sure that the situation is better on the ground. And following the brutal genocide of the 90s, it's very hard to measure Rwanda by our conditions. It's not a democracy. Kagame is looking at economic security without proper stability. And Rwanda is signing agreements with other African states. We need to make sure that we, in the resolution, take into account the same standards as with other African countries, and particularly looking to raw materials and migration.
Pasamos ahora a la segunda parte de...
Moving on to the second part of the debate. First speaker is Ms. Estras Ferragut.
Gracias, presidente. Gracias, comisario.
Thank you, President, Commissioner. Victoire Ingabire is a politician that has a solid training. I know her personally, and her family and children. In 2010, went back to Rwanda to take part in presidential elections. She was arrested and thrown into prison because they said that she conspired against the regime. And there was a case full of irregularities. And this went before the African Court of Human Rights. We gave her the Sakharov Prize in 2012, and there have been constant intimidations, 8 and then 15 years condemnation, and then in June she was put in prison once again. No communication with her family. She is in a cell with a murderer. No communication with her lawyers. Her Kenyan lawyer can't communicate with her because of what Kagame says. We need to make sure that we call for the immediate release of Victoire Ingabire. She hasn't seen her family or her children for a long time. We need to robustly condemn the attack against freedom of expression. There have been many deaths, many people disappeared. There is a constant attack on freedom of expression and political persecution. We need to put out an international call to not stint in our efforts, and that we can't have relations with Rwanda unless it's on full human rights terms.
Muchas gracias, Presidente. Senhor Comissário, caras e caros colegas.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, I would like to raise my voice and call for the release of Victoire Ingabire, heading the opposition in Rwanda. She is being persecuted for exercising a vital right, the right to participate in political life. The EU cannot turn a blind eye in this case or other similar cases in the country. This is about human rights, the rule of law, democracy, and that is why we have to put pressure on the Rwandan authorities so that they can respect their international obligations. And we have to do this so that Victoire Ingabire can be released and so there can be real democratic life in Rwanda. The case of Victoire Ingabire shows how worrying the human rights situation is in Rwanda. Freedom of expression is curtailed, and there are many cases. The Rwandan government crackdown on dissenting voices is worrying, but of course the Rwandan people have the right to choose their future.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, today we must speak for Victoire Ingabire, a woman whose only crime is demanding peaceful democracy in Rwanda. She is opposition leader, and she is laureate of 2024 Liberal International Prize for Freedom. And on 19th June, Victoire was unlawfully rearrested in Kigali. She's now held in solitary confinement, denied contact with her family and international lawyers, and exposed to dangerous and inhumane detention conditions. These abuses come on top of a history of persecution. Victoire has already endured years in prison, an unfair trial, and repeated threats. Yet she continues to stand for freedom and justice. Her case shows the true face of Rwanda's repression. A judiciary weaponized to silence one courageous woman, and through her, an entire democratic opposition. We must be clear. Victoire Ingabire must be released immediately and unconditionally. Her safety is non-negotiable, and the world is watching. This House stands firm with all those who risk everything for democracy and freedom, and so we stand with Victoire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague Beke. You have the floor.
Dank u wel, voorzitter, collega's, meneer de commissaris, beste Remy en...
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, dear colleagues. Victoire Ingabire is a Rwandan politician. And she spent 15 years in the Netherlands as a refugee. It's the third time that we are addressing her case. We already talked about Jean-Jacques Barrot in Congo, we talked about Ingabire in the Central African Republic, and today we're talking about Victoire Ingabire, so the third debate on this subject. With her colleagues, Mrs. Ingabire wanted to raise a voice, a different voice in Rwandan politics, re-establishing the rule of law, human rights in the country, and to do so in particular after the genocide that had occurred in this country. And together with her colleagues, she was arbitrarily arrested. Now, I don't know whether you've seen, for instance, football T-shirts saying "Visit Rwanda," or indeed cycling tournaments being organised in Rwanda. I don't know whether you've seen this, but I think we really need to reflect on that. We cannot tolerate this kind of treatment of Victoire Ingabire. She should be released immediately together with her colleagues. It's a first step in the right direction for Rwanda.
Colleague, we don't have catch the eye, so Mr. McGrath, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, President, and thank you to all of the honourable members for their contributions to this debate. We share your concerns regarding the case of Victoire Ingabire, a Rwandan opposition member arrested in June and currently under trial in Kigali. And I want to also extend a welcome to her children here this evening. The High Representative and the European External Action Service have been closely monitoring developments in this renewed judicial persecution. In coordination with the Member States, the EU delegation in Kigali has raised the case with the Rwandan authorities repeatedly and in various settings. EU Ambassador Calvo Iara has personally engaged the Minister of Justice and the Chair of Rwanda's Human Rights Commission. The EU delegation and the Kingdom of the Netherlands have also been present at the court hearings. We call on Rwanda to fully respect due process and the rule of law. This includes ensuring access to legal counsel, the presumption of innocence, and the right to a fair trial. As a state party to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Rwanda has an obligation to uphold freedom of expression, association and peaceful assembly. I would like to stress that the EU incorporates a rights-based approach throughout all support to Rwanda, including in its development cooperation, ensuring that respect for human rights is central to planning, implementation and assessment. This ensures that our interventions consistently support human rights principles such as universality, inclusion, participation, non-discrimination and accountability. In addition to this integrated approach, the EU allocates specific funding through instruments like the European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights, which directly supports human rights defenders, civil society and initiatives that promote fundamental freedoms. The EU maintains continuous oversight of all projects and the broader situation in Rwanda through regular monitoring and reporting mechanisms. The European External Action Service and the EU delegation in Kigali, in coordination with Member States, will continue to follow with great attention the developments of Mrs Ingabire's legal case, but also the conditions of her detention. We hope for justice to prevail and we extend our sympathy and our support to her family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. The debate is closed. The next debate on the agenda is case of Abdul Asid Goma